And hello, this is John Pinto, 1990 past president of the San Jose Real Estate Board at the time, now the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors. I have Tim Beaubien and Dana here. And Tim, can you tell us a little bit about SCORE and your role at SCORE?
Yeah, SCORE is short for Santa Clara County Association of Realtors. I am the Director of Government Affairs for SCORE, and our mission is to promote home ownership in Santa Clara County and the Bay Area in general, getting more people into that American dream of owning their own property.
Very good. And Dana Dunford, tell us a little bit about you and Hemlane.
Great. Thanks, John. My name is Dana with Hemlane, and Hemlane is an online property management platform. We are nationwide, and so you can basically buy a rental property anywhere and manage it from your home. Of course, there is the need for some local presence for a lot of things, especially finding and placing a tenant. So we work with real estate agents and property managers across the nation to make sure that every single owner has the local boots on the ground, combined with the maintenance coordinator and themselves to make sure they have a great management solution.
You know, I haven't heard that elevator pitch since I first met you on the CAOR Expo floor, and I'm just as impressed with the package now as I was 2 years ago when I met you.
Great. Well, and I think the pitch probably changes quite a bit, but it's the same offering as it was back then.
It sounds very essential. I think that's considered an essential service. So, Tim, let's talk about what I think is the most urgent event upcoming. Am I correct that at the end of July, the eviction moratorium will be sunsetting? And what do you think the consequences of that might be?
Well, I would say that's partially or mostly accurate. It's Santa Clara County and in San Jose, you have the eviction moratorium set by the end of July. But actually at the statewide level, you have the California Judicial Council has kind of open-ended right now eviction moratorium on all evictions, not just those related to COVID-19 or financial hardship. And they've stated that may end up to 30 days when the statewide state of emergency ends. So until that hurdle is overcome, we may still be facing an eviction moratorium for months to come.
Okay, so the end of the eviction moratorium is somewhat indefinite. And if you're a tenant, particularly if you're a tenant that has lost their income stream, there is nothing dire that is going to happen in the next couple of weeks. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say that's an accurate statement.
All right. So, Dana, now more under COVID-19, I saw a news piece on on TV a few weeks ago that mentioned that 13%, if I remember correctly, of the tenants in San Francisco had basically just abandoned their leases and moved out of town. I'm not quite sure of the exact amount, but can you give us some insight into what's happening vis-a-vis that kind of scenario?
Yeah, and that 13% depends on the data source as well as what they mean by abandoning their lease. I think a lot of those, right, are just non-renewals. Their lease is up or they're on a month-to-month, and they've just decided that, you know, San Francisco is not the place for them right now. They don't need to go into the office. And so a lot of them they're obviously not traveling very far, but they're going 3 hours outside of the city, 4 hours outside of the city. We see a lot of that. And then others where, to your point, they go to their landlord and say, I'm going to leave and you need to legally find another tenant to replace me. And I'm locked into the terms until you find that other tenant. But the landlord might be finding that they're reducing rent to find someone to fill that spot, or they're working with the tenant because they do feel bad if the tenant did lose their job or something like that, to just say, that's fine, you're out of the lease and we will go ahead and renew without any termination fee for you. And so what we have seen is that the landlords have been severely hurt and burdened by what is going on, because they're looking at the alternative options, some sort of eviction or court hearing, and saying, realistically, when are we going to get in? How long is this going to be delayed? And just trying to take the high road and say, okay, fine, we'll take the loss from that perspective. It's definitely hurting landlords. It's obviously a case by case basis. Some landlords are more fortunate than others, but it is something that San Francisco is dealing with.
Very good. So let's go with that, Tim. You're advocating for private property rights as the government affairs manager. Is that your title now?
Director.
Guru. So
yeah, guru as well.
So your emphasis is on private property rights. Could you elaborate a little bit and take off from Dana's scenario on the impact that is being had on landlords, and what some of the best remedies are, rather than World War III breaking out between the landlords and the tenants under COVID-19 in the current economy?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen, just for starters, from the eviction moratorium is that was allowed to go through because it wasn't a constitutional taking. There's nothing in these moratoriums that state that all back rent isn't due by the tenant. But I've heard anecdotal scenarios from housing providers that tenants are not impacted by COVID. They're not paying. They're saying they're not going to pay. And that when the eviction moratorium ends, similar to breaking their lease, that they're just going to leave. And that they're going to have to be tracked down. Good luck trying to get the money from me. And that our small mom and pop housing providers are just hurting right now. One solution that I've been offering to them is cash for keys. If you have a really difficult tenant that isn't willing to work with you, offer some lump sum of cash to just get them to move on, open up the unit, and try to bring somebody in more collaborative. The city of San Jose has entered a housing mediation program with Santa Clara County to try to bring a third-party mediator in. And I think that's one of the best solutions to try to bring both sides that are struggling to the table to try to help each other.
And let's run with that mediation and peaceful resolution to these tenant-landlord disputes. What are you observing?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially with the news. And I know the news has been under scrutiny, but it's more of the headlines, what captures clicks, right? And so when you look at it, a headline from even Wall Street Journal or New York Times will say something like, you don't have to pay your rent, no evictions until whenever. And everything's in the fine print of the article, which no one reads. They just look at the photo and the title. But I think there's a lot of misinformation out there of tenants not understanding, if you've lost your job due to COVID, it's an alternative payment plan. It's not that you don't have to pay and you're out of it. You have to pay at a later time, and you can still go to court if you don't make up for that in the future. And those types of things are not being talked about in the news because people don't want to click on that. They don't want to hear that. And so what we found, I mean, throughout the past 4 months, is education to tenants about actually understanding their financial situation, having documentation of how and why they were affected by COVID, making sure that they budget for the future. A lot of that is really important, which brings me to your point, John, of, do you think mediation is a good thing? Absolutely. I think that will, a third party to let tenants know what are the implications here and how should we make sure we're thinking about this for our future. It's all about the tenant. How they should be thinking about it for their future is very important. And so bringing a mediator in is great, bringing third parties in for that, because I do think the courts will be backed up. And so relying on some other means to get things done in some of these cases resolved and having the more extreme cases go to court makes a ton of sense.
Right. Well, let me give you a couple of chirpy stories, because I recently did have a couple of tenants request to get out of their leases early, but they requested it. They didn't impose it. And the reasons were very good. One, it was simply 3% interest rates. I got a chance to become a homeowner. Please let me out. I want to buy. And when I talked to the landlord under COVID-19, you're lucky that we have such a cooperative tenant who wants to work with us to get a replacement tenant, and we should not be difficult. The other tenant that I just experienced called and said that his Fortune 500 Silicon Valley company was untethering him from his desk over in San Jose, and he could live wherever he wanted to. And he had a little baby, 1-year-old baby. The little baby could be friends with your twins. And he decided that he wanted to move down to Santa Maria, where his mother, father, aunts, uncles, cousins, and nieces and nephews were. And he's going to telecommute. So there's some upside for these tenants if they still have jobs, thank goodness. Thank goodness in Silicon Valley, we still have a lot of people with employment. And then our conversation 2 years ago was the whole rent-to-own thing. All of a sudden, that's much more viable as an alternative for tenants because you still have the 96.5% FHA financing with the 3.5% down payment assistance programs for educators and firefighters. And then for everybody else, the down payment assistance program has been decreased from the entire 3.5% down payment to $10,000, but they have other programs you can combine. So there is an opportunity for people to become home buyers. So Dana, let me go to you because we had talked about doing an outreach campaign on lease purchase or just plain purchase. What are your observations in terms of tenants, renters making decisions to pursue home ownership right now?
Yeah, there's, two things about that I would say from a financial perspective of tenants pursuing home ownership. We've seen both trends. We've seen one where in cities like San Francisco, it's actually too expensive for this first-time home ownership, but they never thought it would be possible for them to purchase a house here. They were in this kind of wheel of, I go to work anyways, I'm in my small apartment, very seldomly, who cares? Now they're at home every day working their tech jobs. They still have those jobs and they say, wait, I need more space. I'm, going to have to get a divorce or something if we don't have more space for the two of us to work, and are finding they can go 30 minutes, 40 minutes outside the city and get that space that they want. So you're definitely seeing home ownership from that perspective of people starting to look or saying, I'm going to rent in one of those areas and then purchase if I like it after 6 months, assuming my company will still allow me to work from here. Some of it has been based on what the companies say. There have been companies that have come out that have said, you don't have to come back into the office. And some of the major tech companies have said that in Silicon Valley. And that has completely changed. If they've stated that already, those tenants are already outside the city looking for places. The second one we've seen most common here in San Francisco is actually tenants saying, I'm moving back home with my parents. And they're moving home with their parents for two reasons. Not a lot of times, not actually because they're out of a job. It's because they have realized finally with a downturn that they actually have to save money. It's like a new concept for these tenants that they actually have to save money. And so, wow, there's a downturn. I could lose my job. I should be saving money. Two, now I can live anywhere. Let me go live with my parents and save that money in hopes of purchasing a property. And so we've seen quite a bit of that from tech workers, but as well as like a lot of the schools in San Francisco where we had houses of, 10 students, right? Overnight just became 0. They all moved back home with their parents and are thinking of other places to go and maybe not having a job in San Francisco post-graduation, things like that as well.
Right. Now, Tim, is there any nexus between you and government affairs and the CAOR finance hotline? Do you ever interface with them?
I don't regularly. I can piggyback on Dana's point a little bit that's one of my main missions is how can we help people make that jump from tenancy to home ownership. It's not so much on the financing side, but more the policy side, whether we can get more housing supply built, or more first-time homebuyer programs like what you were talking about for the rent to buy for educators and firefighters. I think that's great. Creative solutions like that to try to make unaffordable Bay Area more affordable for a lot of people is really important and a good solution.
So let's go to the affordability. I think this is a good time to jump in with the whole ADU, junior ADU conversation. What can you tell us on the latest and the greatest on accessory dwelling units, Tim?
Well, that's another great transition as we're seeing people start to migrate back to their parents' homes where they grew up. It provides a little bit of separation and freedom while still living at home. You can live in an ADU in your backyard that your parents built, and then when that kid does one day get enough money to own a property, then that ADU turns into a long-term rental that's a secondary source of income. I work a lot with the city of San Jose on ADUs, and they're one of the posters nationwide in terms of ADU legislation, making it easier to build, whether it's an amnesty program to get unpermitted ADUs brought up to code, payment assistance of getting almost like a first-time home buyer, but a down payment assistance for the capital to build an ADU. And we're seeing them being built in California at a record clip, which is fantastic.
Did you mention down payment assistance for building an ADU?
Down payment assistance, it's poorly worded, but what it is they'll help pay for the upfront capital of building an ADU. And there's a certain requirement that you have to rent it out at an affordable level for a certain number of years. So they'll eliminate some of your permit and school fees to make it cheaper to build, push it through the permitting process faster to lower your cost all in significantly. And then for X number of years, it has to be a long-term rental to the public at, I believe, 80% AMI or lower.
Okay, and so you have a deed restriction for 5 years or whatever it is?
Yes.
Very good. Has there been any nexus into your end of the business, Dana, with ADUs and junior ADUs?
Not in particularly our business, primarily because they're renting single family homes or multifamily already, and the ADU in the back. A lot of times they're a little bit cautious because suddenly it takes like a single family home and makes backyard space communal and stuff like that. So we haven't seen it too much in our space. We have seen though shared housing. If you want to talk about more people in the same area, we have seen that drastically affected by COVID with rental rates increasing as people are breaking those leases.
So shared housing, are we talking about rooms for rent and things of that nature? Rooms for rent,
yeah. Yep.
Oh, well, let's go there for a minute because I have had a demand for that, and I'm not quite sure how you promote a room for rent. What do you do? You're the expert, I guess, with that, right?
Yeah, so we ourselves don't focus too much on it, but we have a lot of customers who do it, and they do it through our platform. There's a lot of listing websites out there that focus on room for rent or services, property management services you can use for that. The benefits, right, is a higher price in total for the space that you rent. Tenants love it because they're not jointly responsible. So if John doesn't pay his rent, it doesn't affect me because we're on separate leases. But then it's a lot more administration with the communal areas because if you're doing rooms for rent, everyone's not jointly responsible for the area, the communal area. So that suddenly becomes the landlord's responsibility.
Ah, I see. Very good. So in conclusion, Tim, what message do you think is important to give to our various publics? And that would be home buyers, home sellers, landlords, tenants, realtors, and politicians. We have a lot of publics at the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors. What message would you like to disseminate?
I was going to say, I think all those boxes that you just checked, you could have probably just said the general public, and it's probably one and the same at that point. My message for housing providers and tenants right now is work collaboratively with each other. You don't know what the other side of the party is going through. Both may be struggling. Take advantage of the mediation programs. Getting angry and getting further and further away from a compromise with each other isn't going to solve anything given the pandemic that we're in. So try to work with each other and come up with an amicable solution. That's the best advice that I can give. For potential homeowners, it's a great it's a great time to enter into the home ownership market if you've been waiting to make that hurdle. Your income is unaffected. Private showings can go on. Virtual tours are fantastic. If you may think that it's difficult to tour a property or go through the home buying process right now with the various shelter-in-place orders in the pandemic, it's not. Interest rates are historically low. It's the safest form of investment you can make. And all those homeowners out there, continue to be safe and enjoy your private property. I'm out there every day fighting for your private property rights. And have a good evening, everybody.
Very good. And Dana, before I ask you what your summary is, I think you're trying to make Tim and I feel bad because we don't have nearly as many surfboards behind us as you do. Are those surfboards?
They are. It's the Hemlane boardroom now that we're working from home.
Oh, oh, the board. Oh, you are funny.
So I live out at Ocean Beach in San Francisco. So it started with our boards, and then slowly we had friends who have left their boards here, and due to COVID, they haven't come back to pick them up. So they might become mine.
Very good. You do recognize my virtual background, I guess, then, right?
Of course I do.
Two of my favorite places, Dana, Vital Tea Leaf, right a block and a half behind my right-hand shoulder.
Okay.
And to my left, Occidental Cigar Bar.
Ah, nice.
When COVID-19 drops, I'll buy a Lagavulin 16 there.
Well, and now I know what cigars you like next time we're together. So
very good. So what message do you think is important to impart to the general public, Dana?
Yeah, I think it's two things. And it kind of goes along the lines of communication, but being very proactive. So that's everyone, right? If you're a tenant, make sure that you're thinking about savings. If you're thinking about buying a home in the next couple of years, it's to Tim's point that now is a great time. Interest rates are super low, and it is a really good time to go out there and buy and set yourself up for that success of an investment of a home. So there's a lot of things you can do proactively. If you're a landlord, you want to be proactive, see how your tenants are doing, how are they feeling, how's their job, all of that. And then the other thing is positivity, in the sense that if you're reading the news, there's a lot of things coming out. They're thinking of stimulus checks round 2. The government stepped in quite a bit here with it, and really think about the positive sides of this, of bringing family closer together, having this time to rethink of where you want to live, what you want to do. And so really think about that as we go through it all together.
Very good. And Dana, I will remind you that if I remember correctly, we have met at Inglenook Winery in Rutherford, haven't we? Once at least?
I love that place. You took our team there, our Hemlane team.
That's right. And Tim did a video blog there with me too. And they have opened up, it's COVID-19 safe. You know, Francis Ford Coppola has no branding on the front of the property. He's got those gates. Everything is outside. So you two have a perpetual invite to come anytime to spend an afternoon of Cabernet Sauvignon tasting. And I will not force upon you a video blog unless you want to do it.
You don't have to tell me twice. I'll be there. You name the date, John, I'll be there.
Very good. Well, I certainly appreciate you guys making yourselves available, because I know you're both running around with your hair on fire in this environment. So thanks for making space for and time for me.
Great. Thanks, John, for having us.
Okay.
Thank you. Always happy to meet. And I look forward to doing this again at Inglenook next time, because I will never turn down a glass of wine.
Very good. Okay, guys. We'll see you later.